Welcome to the show. Over the past 6 years, we've focused on a lot of education issues from distraction in the educational process, to teachers being arrested, to teacher student sex scandals, to dress code, truancy, etc. But there's one thing I've not focused on is posing as a student. Now, it's one of those cases to where if you pretend to be a student, then you're trespassing on private property or faking your way just to not go to just faking your supposed student to make sure that you're checking on your kid. Exactly what happened just hours ago. Just hours ago, a 29-year-old woman was arrested for pretending to be a high school student. Police said she provided the school district with a fake birth certificate in order to enroll. Now, if you're in graduating high school, you can't come anywhere. You're a visitor. You're a visitor, and you have a sticker on you saying that you're a visitor. That's one of the whole purposes. So, what led to the arrest? Take a look.
Here at New Brunswick High School, students are upset. At a school board meeting Tuesday night, they learned a 29-year-old woman was arrested for using a fake birth certificate to enroll.
She attended school for 4 days.
Police have charged that woman, Yu Shin, with one count of providing a false government document with the intent to verify one's identity or age. The school circulated a letter with her picture.
She was pretending to be a freshman, which is more surprising, because I believe she doesn't look like a freshman.
At the same time, it was very unsafe for the school and most of the students in there.
Students tell me even though she was only here for 4 days, they still saw her in the classroom, walking the halls, and some of the students even got text messages from the woman asking to hang out.
I know some of the girls that I know, the girl did ask them to hang out on Commercial Avenue, but they never showed up, and she started acting weird with them. But it's scary because you never know what could happen.
Claudia has a senior at New Brunswick High School. Her daughter told her what was going on and says it's terrifying. She says, how is it that security, teachers, and other staff didn't realize what was going on?
I asked her how old she was, and she did something weird. She looked at me, looked away, and looked back at me and walked off. I think that's a red flag, and they need to think so too.
As police continue their investigation, the school superintendent says the district will re-examine the enrollment process to better identify false documentation. In New Brunswick, Kevin Rincon, CBS 2 News.
L'Oreal pumping.
So now we know which is being charged with tampering with a false government document. That's a thing that's the thing you can be charged with. And you can also be trespassing for you can also be charged with trespassing on private property. And if you're expelled, it's probably the same thing. We're going to deal with that on Throwback Thursday. But if you were to look at pretending to be a student, if you look at pretending to be a student, you look at what happened. About a year ago, a mom impersonating a 13-year-old girl was arrested. And what happened next would even involve the police being involved in this. Now, that's just criminal trespassing. And it's a safety issue. Take a look.
I look like a 7th grader? No? Cool. Awesome.
A 30-year-old woman was arrested after she impersonated her 13-year-old daughter at school.
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna get so caught. I'm actually really scared now. I'm literally on the campground of a middle school.
Casey Garcia donned a yellow marble hoodie and even dyed her hair darker in order to look more like her daughter, a student in 7th grade. Then she says using her daughter's student ID number, she went to school.
I then said hello to the principal, and then I spoke to another faculty member, and then I went to all my classes. I even ate lunch without a mask.
Garcia says teachers were more concerned about the fact that she had her phone out, and that it took until the last class of the day for someone to recognize she wasn't her daughter.
I wanted to see if I could make it the entire day without anybody noticing. And I'd say up until 7th period, I think that's a very long day for a 30-year-old.
On her YouTube channel, Garcia says she was not intending to embarrass the school.
Well, I finally got caught. I told him that I would go to the principal's office.
But to test campus security and shed light on a bigger issue.
We have a problem. There have been one too many mass shootings in schools, elementary schools, colleges, high schools. That is disgusting to think of, that this could have been prevented just by putting metal detectors and more security.
Yes, sir. How can I help?
El Paso County Sheriff's deputies arrested Garcia 2 days after she posted the video of her at school, an interaction that she also recorded and posted online.
What made you guys come down?
Oh,
Besides the viral video.
what? They sent us to come. You have a traffic warrant, so that's what we're here, man.
Besides the unrelated traffic warrant, Casey Garcia was charged with suspicion of criminal trespassing and tampering with government records. She has been released after posting bond. In a statement to KTSM, the San Elizario Independent School District Superintendent said, while there was a breach in security by an individual associated as a parent with the school, we want to assure you that our security measures are being reviewed and evaluated. Casey Garcia also told KTSM, I spent the day in police custody, but my question still remains, are our children safe in our schools?
We need better security at our schools.
I think she was trying to help out the school, but in the other event, she broke the law. That's the whole key here. Well, when is it okay to say at work and not okay to say at work? Coming up next, we're going to continue our You Can't Say That. So, what's happening to free speech in the office? Stay with us. On the first half, we asked the question, what's happening with free speech? So far, we're focusing on was the right to burn the flag, the right to call us white men the devil, having profanity at a bar, not listening to a George Carlin tune, which I didn't make that because of copyright claims, but because I might be demonetized. So now we're going to go into the question. What can be done about sexual harassment? Well, there are already laws on sexual harassment. But, as we'll show you, you can't say some things in the office that could offend women. Otherwise, you could be fired. Here again, John Stossel.
You don't know my name, do you?
Ever see that Seinfeld show where Jerry can't remember his date's name?
What is it?
All he knows is that it rhymes with a female body part.
Mulva?
At the end of the show, he finally remembers.
Oh! Oh! Dolores!
After watching in Milwaukee, Jerry McKenzie told a coworker about it. She didn't get the joke, so Jerry Xeroxed a page out of the dictionary.
And I said, here's the word in question. And I pointed to the word. She looked at that and said, I know what that means. I don't want to talk about it.
She was offended?
Not that I knew. The following Thursday morning, she said, I need to tell you you crossed the line.
Mackenzie apologized, but they ended up arguing.
The next morning, I came to work and I was terminated.
His employer, Miller Beer, ironically sponsored that Seinfeld episode. Still, Miller fired Mackenzie. Mackenzie'd been accused of sexual harassment before, and Miller fired him for poor management judgment.
Once you've stepped over a line that the other person believes is offensive, you have to acknowledge it and back off.
Company lawyer Frank Daly. What's the risk to Miller if you ignore her?
The risk is you're going to be sued, and the recoveries are going to, in many instances, have been very substantial. It's the lawsuit lottery.
Oh, yes. Big damages have been paid.
They basically gave women a loaded gun, that they could make any accusation they wanted, and it was going to be taken as truth.
That's not fair. The law says the victim has to prove her case.
The conversations about sex.
But proving your case can be quite a circus. Remember this? These hearings never determined what really happened, but they did put sexual harassment on the map. Clarence Thomas's career survived, but since lawsuits brought by an offended employee can cost millions, many employers find it safer to just fire the accused.
That's what happened to Eddie Vega. He's an English professor who used to work at SUNY Maritime College until one day he allowed his students to pick a topic.
One student, a female, said, well, how about sex? You know, can we talk about sex?
It was for a writing exercise, and some students used four-letter words. At the end of the class, had any student complained to you?
None. If anything, they have said only good things, that it was a wonderful and enjoyable exercise.
A month later, he was summoned by college officials.
The vice president said, are you telling me that these words were uttered in a maritime college classroom? I said, yeah. And he said, well, that is pornographic, and that is sexual harassment.
Vega was fired. His next job was a desk clerk in a little hotel.
I spent all this time and becoming a college professor, and then in one fell swoop, it's ashes.
SUNY Maritime wouldn't talk to us about Vega's firing. After 3 years, Vega finally found a new teaching job.
Don't hold back.
He encourages his students to speak out, but he holds back. He says he and other teachers must be very careful.
What thought will someone find so offensive that I will again lose my job?
We've lost our freedom of speech. This sounds too grandiose, but this is exactly what freedom of speech is all about.
Eugene Volin, who teaches law at UCLA, says sexual harassment employers to become speech police.
The government is doing exactly what the First Amendment forbids. It's trying to set up a nationwide orthodoxy in all of the nation's workplaces. It's trying to say, these are the jokes you can't tell, these are the opinions you can't express, these are the words you can't use. And employers are listening.
You bet they are. Michael Bloomberg listened. Bloomberg rents out computer terminals that help people keep up with financial news. Doing this has made him a billionaire. So you'd think he could afford to let his employees say whatever they want. But sexual harassment laws frighten even him. Companies should be scared?
Oh, absolutely. The list keeps getting longer of what kind of activities, what kind of conduct is and is not appropriate.
Even your personal email isn't safe. It could be that two people are having a conversation where they don't mind the words. Somebody might walk by, look over their shoulder, be offended.
Yes.
They could sue.
Yes.
And win.
Oh, they'd win.
So, to be safe, Bloomberg put software in his computers that censor words he thinks someone somewhere might find offensive. So, Sleeping Beauty can't prick her finger in the spindle.
That is true.
No regrets about that? You don't see yourself limiting speech?
Not at all. Oh, of course we're limiting speech. If your question is, do I have any regrets? Do I think it's wrong? I don't.
It's chilling how willing many of us are to give up our freedoms. Bloomberg's now censoring terminals in 100 countries. It's as if the most sensitive get to set the rules for the rest of us. A cashier at the Senate coffee shop, Bernice Harris, used to call people honey, baby, and sugar. Then a man complained that was sexual harassment. She was allowed to keep her job.
But I don't call nobody baby no more.
A city attorney in Tennessee ordered his painting removed from a government building after a woman complained. Some companies now ask employees who want to date a coworker to sign love contracts like this. Some forbid dating altogether, which is too bad since one study found married couples were more likely to have met at work than any place else. It's how Bogey and Bacall met, Tom and Nicole, Alec and Kim. I met my wife when we both worked for Good Morning America, but that was before all the new rules.
If you put in those kind of rules, then I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to miss out on possibly the relationship of their lives.
In Westwood, California, Todd Pozovac asked Linda Jaffe out a dozen times.
I think that I would have had a case for going to somebody and saying, look, this guy's really bugging me. You know, he's around all the time. He's asking me out all the time. Do something about it.
Fortunately, she didn't, because after 3 months of his pursuit, she fell in love, and they got married.
High five.
High five. High five.
Now they have a child.
I don't know how he put up with me for those 3 months, because I don't think I would have stuck it out. But I'm very grateful that he did.
Of course, that was then.
This was, 6 years ago. Now things are a lot more hypersensitive.
So sensitive, there's now a $10 billion industry devoted to finding harassment and rooting it out.
This is a business, not a bar.
One company shows workers this musical, which is supposed to sensitize the insensitive.
We want to look at the kinds of things that just bristle you.
Consultants like Olivet Jones run sensitivity training seminars for companies worried about being sued.
Bottom line, don't say anything you wouldn't want your mother to hear you say.
Companies pay Jones some $2,000 a day to educate employees. We assembled this group.
Don't talk about body parts. Don't give people sexual attention of any kind, whether you think they want it or not.
No body parts, no nice eyes.
Just understand that there are some consequences, because your nice eyes may be interpreted by somebody else as a totally different thing. So what does this add up to? Are you becoming a bland person? Yes, you are.
Not everyone's thrilled about that because it's
making the workplace a lot, more restrictive, cold, unhealthy, less fun.
Sometimes it seems as if today in America, instead of people competing to be more self-reliant, people now compete to see who can be most offended. It's not just sexual words that people object to.
It's not just sexual words. It's also in colleges. That when we come back. Well, as you've seen, we've heard about sexual harassment offending free speech. But what about in our schools? Now remember, what we told you about in that lawsuit was that what we said from Hip Hughes was schools are limiting rights to free speech. I mean, if you got Tinker versus Des Moines, that's the whole case here. And the whole case was like this: the government doesn't have to compel you to just say the Pledge of Allegiance or whatever you want. Once again, here's John Stossel.
At Carmel High School in Indiana, teachers were frightened when they discovered a student, Brian Conrad, had created a website under the address Time to Die. Turns out Time to Die is just internet jargon for keeping someone out of an AOL chat room, but the teachers didn't know that, and Brian on his site had listed the names of some teachers and, as a joke, said, "Are they Satan-worshipping demons? Laugh in their faces, shun them."
It was pretty scary because there's devils, there's pentagrams, my name's on it. Anybody could find this and send me a message. They knew where I worked.
Did anyone?
No.
But she and two other teachers felt so threatened by the website, they sued Brian and his family, demanding thousands of dollars in damages. They even tried to get criminal charges filed against Brian.
There's no direct threat. He just says, laugh at you.
Plus the word shun, and I know that I've got some students in my class that could really misconstrue what that means. And to some wacko kid, what's the connotation of shun?
If I'm not mistaken, Amish societies, if someone is shunned, they are considered dead. They no longer exist.
But
so if someone
really
is to
contorting it to make it a direct threat.
Why? That is not a normal vocabulary word that's going to be used.
But ignoring people is okay. It's a form of free speech. It's not physical threat.
You can ignore a statement and you can ignore for a short period of time, but to shun is permanent.
Some teachers named on the site, like Janice Crow, thought it was obvious that the site was a kid's joke. Misspellings and all.
I know I'm not a Satan worshiper, and none of these people are Satan worshipers, and I thought it was silly.
And Brian was apologetic.
He came forward, he had tears in his eyes.
I guess that was a relief to find he admitted to it.
No.
Confession and later apology isn't enough for this group. They want punishment. His mom, Lori Hansen, can't believe what's happened.
He voluntarily turned himself in. Are they going to take this? It was a kid's prank.
No, this is not the way teenagers express themselves.
None of you was harmed.
But we were harmed emotionally.
Here's the lesson plan. If you do this, these are your consequences.
What are the consequences?
Consequences? For parents, it's money.
And criminal charges for the boy?
He was intimidating. And that is a criminal charge.
So what's the effect on Brian?
He feels like his life is over. That's what he keeps telling me.
Come on, ladies, toughen up. You're supposed to stand for free speech, the open debate.
Free speech means freedom to state an opinion. It does not mean freedom to slander and freedom to threat. And no matter who thinks it is or isn't a threat, I do.
There's that frightening threat to free speech. The offended get to decide which speech is okay. It's even written into sexual harassment law.
What is appropriate and what is inappropriate really exists only through the eyes of the person who's experiencing it.
the person who hears it gets to determine if it's offensive.
Absolutely.
But what if my intent is good?
Doesn't matter, John. If I shoot you dead, do you care that I didn't mean to?
But we're not talking bullets here, we're talking words.
No, they have the same power.
That's a dangerous concept. Yes, words can hurt, but if words are bullets, then it's okay to answer words with bullets. I think words are words and bullets are bullets, and it's important to our freedom that we keep them apart.
So good point. He makes a good point. Words are words, bullets are bullets. Let's keep them apart. So that we don't have to be threatening our teachers or just making jokes. I mean, we're protected under the First Amendment. But the thing you have to understand is what is limited and not limited. That's what you have to understand here. So the question is, what's happening with free speech in books, or what happened back in Oklahoma City? Coming up next, you're going to meet a kid who made at home, and you're also going to be and the question: can a book lead to violation of free speech? We'll answer that next. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, you think of all places for free speech would be in college. Think the unthinkable, said one school. And freedom to speak, that's what one college says. But that means spoken out to. As John Salsel tells us, he got drowned out by loud voices.
Today, something else is going on. Ward Connerly thinks racial preferences are wrong and goes to universities to argue that.
Our government should treat everybody the same. Equal protection under the law.
Now, as you can hear, this is not a universally popular idea. Treating everyone equally means an end to some affirmative action programs that help minority students get admitted to school.
I know it's your school, but you have a right to be civil. I'm here because I was invited to be here, and I thought that most of you would be willing to listen and to engage in civil discussion. But you cannot engage in civil discussion.
Here at the University of Texas, these students say Connerly's ideas are so objectionable, he should not be allowed to be heard.
They're going to try and spin this out and say that somehow his free speech, his First Amendment rights were violated. Our First Amendment rights as students were violated when he hit this campus.
We don't support First Amendment rights. That's what the First Amendment.
Students like this one who think Connerly should be heard also get shouted down.
It bothers you that a black man would be against your point of view. If that isn't saying...
The same thing happened here at the University of Michigan. It happens regularly to Connerly.
Sometimes I'm prevented from actually speaking because it's not just a matter of heckling. They will try to block the door from allowing me to get in. The game plan is to make sure that this guy does not get his message across.
You're threatening them.
That does not give them a license to go out and deny me the right to come on campus and to argue my point of view.
At Columbia University, a Connerly supporter was shouted down. "We win," celebrated the protesters, students like these.
I felt like it was a victory. The conference was completely disrupted, and that was exactly what we were hoping to do.
You can go back home to the sewer that you came from and, spout your ideas there, and that's fine.
You may not speak here.
Sure.
Some people might have wanted to hear him. Who gave you that power to decide for everybody?
I'm taking the power, actually, by going out and protesting, saying racists get off my campus.
Whoever yells the loudest wins? Isn't that like third grade behavior?
It's not third grade.
I mean, if they get chased out of the city, they get chased out of the city. Their ideas aren't welcome.
Colleges have been where open debate was supposed to flourish.
Colleges are the worst places in the world, often, to have a civil discussion about any issue.
Get off this campus. We don't want you here.
I'm just trying to educate myself and other people with me. I got a taste of it at Brown University a few years ago, covering a rally against sexual violence. I did a politically incorrect thing. What's allowed? To spark debate, I questioned the activists' broad definition of sexual misconduct.
This is appropriate behavior. We can't hear you with these people trying to address something.
When some did want to speak, the demonstrators righteously shouted them down.
So, can I ask you why you're screaming?
TV hype! Rape is not TV hype! Rape is not TV hype! Come on, everybody, louder!
At this school, something you'll learn is that there is one opinion, and the other opinion turns out to be wrong.
Where do students learn that censorship's the answer? Well, today, their schools often teach that by example. Many schools' official policy is to ban words that the sensitive would consider offensive.
Old Dominion University bans offensive sexual jokes. Virginia Commonwealth bans humor and jokes about sex that denigrate women or men in general.
Alan Charles Kors, co-author of The Shadow University, read us samples of things prohibited at universities. At the University of Maryland,
distribution of written or graphic materials that are derogatory. There would go most of the great writers in the history of world literature, and it bans as harassment sexual looks such as leering and ogling, licking lips or teeth. I hope you don't have dry lips at the University of Maryland. Or take your attorney with you to the cafeteria, holding or eating food provocatively. What our universities are teaching students is that freedom should die in their hearts.
Everyone wants to fight racism and sexism and hateful speech, but doing it with speech codes is an attack on freedom.
John has a good point right there. So, the question is, can a book violate the free speech? That's the one question we're going to ask when we return. This kid made a homemade atom bomb at home. It was a homemade one. And now, books, people making laws that say banning books about making weapons. Stay with us. Free speech doesn't mean you can say anything. You can't scream fire in a crowded theater. People could be trampled, could be liable. And what they call fighting words are illegal. You tell rioters, beat that guy up, and they do, you're in trouble. Clear and present danger, says this one Supreme Court ruling, but imminent lawless action can be incensed. For example, can a book about making bombs could violate our First Amendment rights? Here again, John Stossel.
a homemade bomb is a terrible threat. One small device can kill so many people. Maybe we could stop bombings if we could block the know-how, keep people from finding out how to do this. How did Tim McVeigh learn to make a bomb out of fertilizer?
He could have got the stuff from my books.
Ragnar Benson lives in the hills of western Idaho. He asked us not to say exactly where. Benson's an acknowledged expert in all kinds of weapons and explosives.
Breathe that smoke and you'll notice your heart starts racing.
He writes books about them. Books like Homemade Grenade Launchers, Homemade C4.
This is a book that tells how to make a military-grade explosive at home.
Tim McVeigh bought it. He also bought Ragnar's Guide to High Explosives.
That's a fun book. And setting off explosives can be very recreational, can be addictive, just like a kid with firecrackers.
And useful to someone who, say, needs to blow up tree stumps to clear land. But Ragnar's books go well beyond tree stumps.
Serious survivors know that there may come a day when they need to demolish bridges, shatter steel, or derail tanks.
It's important for people to be able to defend themselves, he says, in case tyrants in government come after you in a tank. Your rifle won't stop a tank.
What you need is a flamethrower. One whiff of the dragon's napalm-scented breath will put attackers at your mercy. That's pretty good copy, isn't it, to sell books?
But what if people use his book to commit crimes?
I don't worry about it. I do worry about the personal lack of responsibility within our society.
The criminal is responsible, he says. It's time to stop blaming others, like authors of books.
I'm sitting here with a handful of books on homemade grenade launchers, guerrilla arsenal. I am presenting no harm to the world at all by possessing these books or by reading these books.
Claire Wolfe, who asks us not to show her face, writes books about defying the government. And that, she says, shouldn't be anyone's business but hers and her readers.
It is solely magical thinking to imagine that books or movies, quote, make people do things. People wish that if the books and the movies would go away or would be different, people wouldn't do terrible things. For instance, the Manson gang very famously blamed the Beatles for Helter Skelter. People who are looking for an excuse to do evil will do evil.
Yet this year, Benson's publisher told Benson his books on explosives are now illegal.
No dilly-dallying.
Because last year, Congress passed a law saying it's a crime to distribute information about making a destructive device.
We can't sell these books anymore because if there's intent to violate federal law, we could be facing a $100,000 fine and 20 years in jail.
Even before the government banned books, private lawyers got some ban by suing the publishers. Paladin Press recalled all copies of Hitman after someone allegedly followed its instructions and murdered 3 people. The victim's relatives sued Paladin. Several major news organizations, including ABC, NBC, and the New York Times, all filed briefs on behalf of the publisher, defending its right to sell the book. The victim's lawyer says that's disgusting.
The media should have had the intelligence to be able to draw the line, but they haven't. Walt Disney, for God's sake, has come to the aid of Paladin Press.
The news organizations defended Paladin, saying if that book can be censored, what's next? ABC News? This broadcast? Against Paladin's wishes, its insurance company settled the suit. It paid several $1 million, and Paladin quickly pulled Hitman from the shelves.
The fact that someone was able to buy the book Hitman and then kill is almost coincidental. How many people have committed murder and assassinations without reference to a book like Hitman?
It turned out that Hitman's author was revealing no secrets about being a hitman. In fact, she was just winging it.
Hitman claims to be written by a professional assassin named Rex Farrell. Not true. It's written by a housewife. And where did she get most of the information? Off television.
That's right, she researched the book by watching detective shows. The uncomfortable fact is that even if the government banned Hitman and other books, the information would still be out there, unbannable. The explosives and weaponry detailed in Benson's books are found in library books, encyclopedias, magazines, survivalist literature, and newspapers. One convicted bomber says he found the makings of his bomb in the Reader's Digest.
Good grief. Here's instructions on how to make a rifle out of wood blocks and plumbing pipes. Here's one on how to make a homemade grenade. And here's what it is. Department of the Army Improvised Munitions Handbook. One of the best books in the world for learning how to blow things up.
Available to everyone from the government printing office.
I'm not providing anything that couldn't be acquired in another place.
Especially on the internet. Within hours of the Oklahoma City bombing, an internet user posted a description of the kind of device used. Censorship can't keep things like this under wraps anymore because of the internet. It can't really be censored. Police could shut down one site or 100 and block this or that channel, but there are millions of pathways. One site based in another country could still reach every computer in America. And what can be acquired is pretty amazing. When Nate Chicola was 15, he thought for a science project, he'd try to find out how to build an atomic bomb.
Just sort of mentioned, you can go on the internet now and get information. And I sort of wasn't exactly up to date on things. I went on there and a couple of clicks, and I was right there.
Finding the information was easier than he'd ever imagined. He didn't have plutonium, thankfully, but he built a papier-mâché model that was dead-on accurate.
I just carried it out these front steps, carried it on my shoulder, and walked right to school with an atomic bomb on my shoulder.
And the government's passing laws to censor books. In the age of the internet, it won't matter anymore.
Found 563 web pages simply for atomic bomb.
The cork is out of the bottle.
Some final thoughts about speech and liberty when we return.
We're going to talk about speech and liberty because we got to move on here because there is another issue here. Because it's on one thing, banning movies. Coming up, you're about to meet a man, you're about to see beat a man who was angry that a government in Oklahoma, the same state that was in the bombing, this wasn't about the bombing, this was all about one movie that they banned because of child pornography. Rob Stafford would have that. Stay with us. Can you ever imagine that your favorite film is being off the shelf because it was illegal? Isn't that unconstitutional? You're about to meet one man who bought that illegal movie in Oklahoma, and what surprised everybody here in Oklahoma, that it would violate child pornography laws. Here's Rob Stafford.
This man is angry about a movie. He's not singing A Christmas Carol, and he's definitely not singing the praises of the police.
It's embarrassing. People cannot watch or possess even the Tin Drum without fear of arrest and prosecution.
Hi. You guys want to sign our petition with us here? This man is also angry about the movie, but his pitch in a lower key is more folksy than grunge rock.
We're taking a stand against illegal, upsetting child pornography in our community. Where are you from?
Marshall Island?
Do you have pornography on Marshall Island?
No.
Oh, good. All right.
Oklahoma City, forever remembered for the worst act of terrorism on U.S. soil, is back in the headlines again. But this is not a story about the bombing. Now this conservative city in the heartland is the center of a fierce constitutional fight. A battle over something our founding fathers never contemplated 2 centuries ago. A videotape. This videotape. The Tin Drum, which won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Film in 1979, is a German movie about a boy so horrified by adult behavior during the period before World War II that he stunts his own physical growth by throwing himself down a flight of stairs. Prejudice, oppression, and violence are seen through the eyes of a child. Although it's not what would be considered hardcore pornography, the film does contain 2 suggestive scenes between the boy and a 16-year-old girl. They appear to be having oral sex. And in this bedroom scene, we can't show you what happens next either. It's also too graphic for network television. But access to the very same material in video stores and libraries is your choice. Or is it?
We should be able to have a ban on something which causes great harm to us as a nation, morally and spiritually.
Should an Academy Award-winning film be banned?
Excuse me, would you be seated while I listen to this point of order?
And who gets to decide? 2 decades after its release, The Tin Drum is dividing Oklahoma City.
You get 5 more seconds, me, sir.
This man is being confrontational.
Library meetings that used to be quiet are now loud with debate over obscenity and censorship.
They want to control the sites presented, and that is censorship. I wrap myself today in free speech, free expression of ideas. We are not the same. The public is not the same. Thank you.
For years, The Tin Drum, rated R, gathered dust on video store shelves throughout Oklahoma City. Its one library copy wasn't doing big business either, says Library Executive Director Lee Bronner.
Have you seen the movie? Oh, yes, I have. It's an unusual film. It may not be for everyone, but it's certainly not an obscene film.
Do you think a child should be able to rent this movie?
Absolutely. It should be available to anyone.
I think that was clearly child pornography. That was 2 children under the age of 18 involved in a sexual situation.
Good morning. Bob Anderson is president of the Oklahomans for Children and Families. OCAF has been fighting sexually explicit businesses and pornography since 1984.
We have to protect our children from sexual abuse, sexual violence. If we find a magazine or a video or anything that we think is in violation of our obscenity laws or child pornography laws, we turn it over to the police.
Which is what he did last June, after he heard about the Tin Drum for the first time. He gave the library's copy to the police, who watched the scenes in question. then brought the video to Judge Richard Freeman.
They said, Judge, here's a movie we'd like you to look at and tell us if you think it's obscene. I watched that one scene and said, yep, sure is.
Although the Tin Drum was judged illegal in Oklahoma City, district attorneys in nearby Tulsa and Norman said it was not child pornography. In fact, the Tulsa DA said it's a very real possibility Judge Freeman's ruling would be declared unconstitutional.
Well, that's his opinion.
Do you think that this statute was designed to stop movies like the Tin Drum?
Well, this community is entitled to have the law enforced as it's written by the legislature, and that's what it is.
Judge Freeman's verbal opinion came without any hearing.
No one was allowed to come to the defense of the Tin Drum. This is the United States of America.
But under Oklahoma law, the judge said, a movie is automatically child pornography when a participant in a sex act appears to be 17 or younger.
Maria?
Huh?
Wie alt bist du?
16 geworden.
Ich auch.
Do you have any evidence that any child has ever been harmed by watching the Tin Drum?
Whether the child is harmed has had nothing to do with it. If all these children are looking at this and being exposed to it, they're going to try these things out. I just believe, Rob, that 8-10 years downstream, our sex crimes are going to skyrocket.
For anyone to excerpt 3 minutes from a 2-hour and 20-minute movie and make a declaration about it that has the force of law, now that might be obscenity.
Backed by the judge's informal ruling, the police immediately confiscated all copies of the Tin Drum from the city's video stores. But that was only the beginning. According to 5 store managers, police demanded they turn over their rental lists, which is against industry policy and an apparent violation of the Video Privacy Protection Act.
One of the officers had told me that this would be a stupid thing to go to jail over.
Store manager Eric Stewart faced an agonizing dilemma.
To either be arrested and let out of the store to jail in front of my customers, or to give them the customer information. I chose not to be arrested.
Plainclothes police and unmarked cars then went to the homes of at least 3 movie renters. One was Michael Camfield, the musician we met earlier. At 9:40 on a quiet June night, Camfield was startled by a knock on his door. When they first identified themselves as police officers, what went through your mind?
Well, I really thought that something terrible had happened.
When they told him they came for his video, Camfield felt momentary relief.
I thought, okay, this is just about a videotape.
A videotape, nevertheless, he believed he had the right to watch, and he said so.
It became obvious to me that they weren't going anywhere in spite of my objections. They were still standing on my doorstep and still waiting for that videotape.
So reluctantly, he handed over the film. A film that, in an irony not lost on Camfield, is about the rise of Nazism and the fall of freedom in pre-war Germany. Did they show you a warrant?
They did not show me a warrant.
Were you intimidated?
I was intimidated. I thought they might come into my home, and I thought I could have been taken to jail.
The police got what they came for, but they also got more than they bargained for when they knocked on Michael Camfield's door. As it turns out, he's not just a rock and roller.
Good afternoon, ACLU of Oklahoma.
You heard right. The ACLU. Police had unwittingly made a house call to a top official in Oklahoma's American Civil Liberties Union, a man who reads the Constitution for a living, a man who knows his rights.
I want to vindicate the Tin Drum. I want the court system to determine, as I think it will, that this is not child pornography.
In July, Camfield sued Oklahoma City's police and district attorney for violation of his constitutional rights, including his freedom of expression and freedom from unreasonable search and seizure.
It's fortunate that I was in a position to challenge this particular activity and to let people know about it.
And it's precisely the way the police reacted, some say overreacted, that has fueled passions here in Oklahoma City, where they like their oil fields large and their government small. The notion of Big Brother watching what Oklahomans watch has even longtime conservatives riled up.
It certainly struck me as an abuse of police authority.
News Talk 1000, KTOK presents Open Mic Live.
Conservative Oklahoma talk show host Mike McCarville is normally a big police booster.
I don't care how many badges you've got or how many commissions
permissions you got hanging on your wall at home. You cannot go into a place of business and demand records that are essentially private.
What puzzled McCarville and many of his listeners was why the police needed to go to any homes at all. Why not simply wait a day or two for the videos to be returned?
What was their rush? I've asked the question on the air a jillion times. I've never gotten an answer.
Police officials would not come on McCarville's show to explain their actions, nor did they respond to several interview requests by Dateline. But in a statement, the Oklahoma City police chief said the video stores voluntarily gave up their tapes, and plainclothes officers also went to some homes. No seizures were made, as all copies were voluntarily given to the police. With the ban, it's now a felony to possess the tin drum anywhere in Oklahoma City, in private homes, video stores, and libraries.
We're talking about one movie. What's the harm of just pulling it off the shelf?
The harm is that you start the riptide of anyone coming in to ask that materials be removed because they happen to find them offensive or they don't care for them.
So for now, at least in Oklahoma City, the movie morality of Oklahomans for children and families has prevailed.
Here's a copy of the Tin Drum that we rented in New York, and this is what it says on the label.
Good. Currently banned in Oklahoma, USA.
How do you feel about that?
I'm not embarrassed. We do not want children molested, abused.
A lot of people in the community have decided that they don't want this particular group to decide what they can see. I think a ban makes us look very foolish in the eyes of the rest of the world.
In the eyes of the rest of the world. That's probably the whole key here. The point is, if you don't want to watch it, return it. If your kids don't want to watch it, then there's laws. So we as America should decide that if kids don't want to watch it, we send them in their rooms. We should be able to watch whatever we want to watch. Or play any game that we want. That's up to the parents. That's before the ESRB came in and said, we need ratings. So my take on this, we're not going to have time for this, but I'm going to give you my take probably on Throwback Thursday or on Friday. Speaking of Throwback Thursday, come up with Throwback Thursday, a list of stores for running in the hallways, to even one of the worst things, being sued for free speech. Then also on Break Friday, why are CD prices so high when it only costs about $1 to make? Just $1 bill. Just one George Washington. Well, I'll have for you on Friday. That's Give Me a Break for Wednesday. The second half of Give Me a Break Wednesday going into Thursday. We'll see you for Throwback Thursday on the GMB YouTube channel. For all of us here at YouTube and Give Me a Break, I hope you had a great day. Have a good night.